How wonderful would it be to get into a time machine? Well, if that's not possible for now, how about a time machine podcast that will take you to the world where you were 13 years old? Hello, everyone. This is Priyanka Komala, your host of Career Startup Podcast, a podcast to spotlight Asian entrepreneurs and interesting people that I meet across my life. My guest for today is a 13-year-old from Gurgam in India. She interviews people to know about their world when they were 13. Join me to welcome the youngest guest of my podcast, Aarushi Gupta. Aarushi, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Priyanka, for having me.
Such a pleasure, Aarushi. And as I mentioned, you're the youngest person on my show to date, and I really appreciate the wonderful work that you're doing
Thank
to take us down through the memory lane and help us realize what we were doing when we were 13. So let's get started. Tell us about yourself to our listeners.
My name is Aarushi Gupta, and I'm a 13-year-old who's going to turn 14 this month. And I'm currently in ninth grade, and I'm from Gurgaon, which is in the north of India. And I have my own podcast show called as When I Was 13. Times when I have some free time to myself, I listen to some music or I go for my music classes.
That's pretty cool, Arushi. And Arushi goes to school.
Yeah.
So you come from Gurgaon. So tell us a little bit about the
Yeah,
place.
okay. In Gurgaon, there are a lot of malls for you to go shop or watch a movie. Like there are a lot of close by food places where you can just walk and go to, which I really like. In Gurgaon, like the food is like the Indian food over here is also very good. And then there are a lot of people here from the other parts of India. Like you'll see Bengalis, Gujaratis, you'll see people from Tamil Nadu. So there are a lot of people. So it's pretty diverse.
That's very interesting. So how about the weather in Gurgaon?
It changes a lot. That's one thing. Last year, there was a short time for winters, and it was very cold for like about 3 months. But the year before that, it was like the summer was so short, and the winter just came in around September or I think mid October, and it continued till March. And the only thing I remember worrying about is about Holi, because in Holi it's a festival of colors, and you play with water. But if it's winters, I mean water is cold and I will not be allowed to do that. So I was really scared at that time that winter, please go away, because the winters are very cold. I mean, I'm sure in Boston it snows, but here for me it's very cold. Summers are very hot, it reaches to about 40 degrees. And finally today, after months, it rained. So I'm very happy about that.
That's interesting
Yeah.
to hear in a nutshell, right? Like how the climate change
Yeah.
affects all of us. Thank you for sharing those interesting tidbits about your place. Now, you're a ninth grader and
Yeah.
you've started this podcast a year ago. How did you come up with the idea of When I Was 13 podcast?
In eighth grade, I used to watch this show on Comedy Central called Alex Inc. So it's about a guy who quits his job and starts his own podcast career. So from that, I got to know what a podcast is, and I asked my father about what a podcast really is, and I got to know about the whole podcast world. And I also wanted to do something like as like a creative thing outside of school. I tried a few things before, but I mean, I didn't enjoy them that much as I am right now with my podcast. So I started when I was 13, because every time, my parents would also say that, when I was 13, the world was like this. I wanted to get to know that in detail from different age groups. So that's how I started when I was 13. And because of the show Alex Inc., I decided to make When I Was 13 a podcast.
Well, I'm glad to hear your inspiration and also surprised the way you've taken the thoughts from your parents and your family, because most of the times, right, when I speak to my parents and they're like, when I was XYZ,
Yeah.
channelizing it in a very effective way, which gives a lot of
Yeah.
inspiration and opens up a world, right?
Few of them tell me I only had one TV channel, and I'm like, wait, what? How? Like, how did you manage to entertain? I mean, obviously they went outside, but for me right now, I have a lot of TV and Netflix. So, and then at times to time I go downstairs, but I seriously can't believe how people watched a one TV show, went down for like 2 hours and came back and started studying again. So that's something that I will never like see right now. But that's what like seriously makes me think about how the world has changed.
So walk us through your
Yeah.
podcasting journey.
In the first few episodes, people who I reached out to, my parents knew them, and I started like that. And then slowly those people who I interviewed talked about my podcast, and I got to know more people. And then I opened a Facebook channel and then a Twitter account, and I got to know people from Twitter or Facebook. And Twitter has actually helped me gain more guests that I've not known and they're new to me, because at first it was like people who I saw one day and they know me. But now through Twitter or Facebook, I know few new people. Like today I am meeting you and you're a new person, and I really like meeting new people. And publish an episode, I would have interviews only on weekends, as I have school on the other days. After I finished an interview, after the interview I would record an introductory episode. I'm not that great at editing and audio, so I sent it out to someone and they helped me to edit it. So that is how I publish an episode.
That's very interesting. So, what are some fun aspects of podcasting?
I like meeting new people. I like to get to know how different their life is from mine, and I really like to get to know how times have changed. And every time I meet new people, I ask one question on my show, which is, "Would you give any advice to me and all the others listening to this show?" And those small advices, they put and I put them together and I channelize them through every day. So, and also through my podcast, I've gained a lot of confidence. So that's one of the pros of podcasting.
I see that you've done 13, 14 episodes so far. Who's your best guest?
All the guests have been inspiring, but if I had to choose one, it would be Shomi Datta Gupta. So I interviewed her about how the world was 13 and how what her career really is. And on asking her the advice question, she told me, and this I've stuck with this advice throughout since then, is that try to get bored. It is okay to get bored. And it is actually true. Like, you should actually get bored, because the moment you get bored, you so many thoughts open up, and it actually helps you to move on and get an open mind. So that's something that I really liked about her.
Do you ever feel bored?
While sleeping, I take time to sleep. I mean, instead of like reading a book or something, I just lie down and just stare up to the ceiling and just calm myself down. And I just fall asleep, and that's like the time I get bored. And the next day I wake up and I feel more fresh, and I feel like, oh, today I can do this, and it actually helps me plan out my day. So that's something I do.
To all our listeners out there, right? A piece of advice from when I was 13, Aarushi Gupta. Find time to sleep. And that's a very rejuvenating and a very creative process in itself, because every day, if you have enough rest, you feel more energetic to get your day started. Absolutely. So tell us about your dream guest. Do you have a dream guest that you would like to bring on your show?
My dream guest would be Lilly Singh, who is a YouTuber who's also known as Superwoman. I've been watching her YouTube videos for a long time. I love watching them. One thing that I really get inspired from her is that at first she tried to open a dance studio in Toronto, but I mean, that didn't succeed for her. But she didn't think about that, and she started her YouTube channel because she thought, like, what, hey, I'm good at this, I love doing this, I should do it. And from then to now, like, now she's going to have her own talk show. So the amount of people that she's inspired is something I really want to achieve someday, and that's why I would really love to interview her.
That's fantastic. And Lily Singh is an awesome person. She makes us, look at life in a very humorous way through her fun antics. Her late night show with Lily Singh is on the way as well. So I hope you get her on your show. So let's talk about the personal side of Arushi. As a podcaster, you're doing something that's different from what your friends do at school, right? How do your friends see you when you tell them, hey, I do this fantastic podcast?
First thing when I told them, oh, I started a podcast called When I Was 13. I mean, they knew what a podcast was, but they wanted a few insights, like how a podcast really goes. So I told them about, I interview people, and then they listen to the whole conversation, and they found it pretty amazing. And every time I release an episode, they are like, oh yeah, you released an episode. They listen to it, and then they text me back, it was amazing. they also support me a lot in that, in the same way.
How do you balance podcasting given you are at school?
My podcasts usually happen over the weekends, as I don't have school those days, and the morning part of your day is mostly free for me. So those days I interview people, and I start the whole process of publishing an episode only on the weekends. Times, if I have too much of homework for the weekend and I really have to do a podcast show, and I also have an exam coming up, I study for the exam, do my podcast, and maybe do the homework, in school, lunch break, or whenever I get free time. So that's how I manage a podcast in school. But for music, I actually enjoy doing it, and I enjoy doing podcasts. So there's no, getting tired feeling in that.
So, what's the secret of your success, Arushi? Tell us about your family and friends who support you in your endeavors.
I personally don't think there's a secret to success, because all of us know that if you work hard, you will gain success. But one thing I actually figured out about myself through podcast is that, at times, a few subjects I like really don't want to study, or like, and at that time I really need to push myself to work hard so that, I can get good marks. But when I'm doing podcast, I really enjoy it, and naturally that hard work is being put forward to, and I don't realize that, but it just happens. So if you really enjoy something you do, you don't need to worry that much about, working hard, because it just naturally comes to you, and that's how you become successful. So that's something that I think has helped me to come has helped me to be successful. And for support, my family and friends have been a huge support. My mom and dad, they always, encourage me. They always tell me that, get up and conquer the world, and believe in yourself. And my friends also, as I mentioned earlier, every time I publish an episode, they also encourage me by saying, oh, this was really good. And yeah, that's how I have those my family and friends also, push me forward and help me uh, to continue podcasting.
That's amazing. And the support of family and friends is really crucial, Arushi, because as you are talking through your journey, it reflects and kind of aligns with what I go through as well. Podcasting is fun, and sometimes you don't realize how many hours you're spending on it. So tell me, Arushi, how can we be of help to you apart from getting Lilly Singh on your podcast?
I would like to know how you get guests on your show, because through Twitter it has also helped me a lot. But at times it's kind of hard. I reached out to an author once, and I understand, but like there are times I thought, oh, it's a 13-year-old, let's just can't do that. I have more important things. So how do you plan on getting guests on your show?
You hear from some, you don't hear from the others, but you just move on at the end of the day. You enjoy podcasting, right? And if there are people who want to support you in your journey, they're going to come and rally for you. But if not, they might have something else. It's not just about you or not about a 13-year-old. It's about their time commitments or where they are in their life. I think that shouldn't stop us from doing what we are set to do, right? So keep pursuing people on Twitter. And say, for example, I find a lot of my guests on Twitter. I started like you with a couple of my friends in my network and I said, hey, why don't you be my guest? I've noticed in the last few days, I've got a lot of leads from people saying, hey, I love your podcast. Can I be on your show? So keep doing the work, have fun. With that being said, we have a fun rapid fire round in our show. Share a word that comes to your mind when I say the following. Can you tell us what's your native language and then one word to describe yourself in that language?
So my native language is Bengali, and one word that I would describe myself in that language would be Mishti. So that means like a very sweet, kind person.
Who's your favorite podcaster?
Padma Priya. So she runs this podcast called Suno India.
A fun hobby of yours?
A fun hobby would be music.
What does family mean to you?
Family means a very loving and supportive group of people that I have, that I'm grateful to have.
Thank you, Arushi, for spending time with us and sharing interesting insights about your life and the podcasting journey. We wish you the very best. Until another episode with another interesting guest, This is your host, Priyanka Komala, signing off.